Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project Season 12, Episode 6. Thanks for sticking with me all these seasons and all these episodes. We have a fun topic today, a very different one, because I actually am not going to be alone for most of this episode. Yay! And it's going to be a recap of the past 3 years of full-time YouTube content creation, employment, and what that's like. So we'll talk about that in a second. For now, though, we'll talk about some gear, got a couple listener messages, and then we'll dive into the episode. So first and foremost, right now, I am recording on the Rode NT1 Signature Series into the Rodecaster Duo on the NT1 preset. So that is, that's my recording right there. And nothing has changed basically from last week in that regard. But there will be some changes for most of the episode because so this whole episode topic was actually my wife Heather's idea, which I think was a great idea, better than any ideas I normally have. Last March of 2024 marked my 3-year anniversary of leaving my job and becoming a full-time content creator. 3 years is a pretty long darn time. And the world of anything online, it's like dog years, so it's quite a long time. And she decided, like, hey, what if we kind of talked about that and that experience and what you've learned and what it's been like and all that sort of stuff. So I said, absolutely, that sounds awesome. And that's what we're talking about today. And so we already recorded that, and now I'm doing the intro for it. And so most of this episode will be that interview, but we use some different gear. So that's why I'm talking about it right now. The gear now, nearly. Anyway, because I have my new studio set up, I was able to use a new 2-person podcasting setup, which was a lot more comfortable than it had been in the past, and that's awesome. So instead of using what I'm using now, we recorded with the Mackie DLZ Creator XS. Heather was on the Shure Sm7B, and I was on the Blue Sona. And I got to admit, I had kind of a hard time dialing in the Sona exactly how I liked it on the XS, whereas the Sm7B was much easier. But a cool thing, or at least I hope it's a cool thing, it was my first time really using for an extended period the auto mix feature of the DLZ Creator, which is basically like you can kind of set it how even if some levels are a little different, there's different speakers, it can sort of do exactly what it sounds like and auto mix everything together. So hopefully that kind of helps some of that dynamic range that can take place when you have 2 different people with different voices talking on mics. But that's what Heather and I are using for most of this episode. But speaking of microphones, we're going to listen to someone else right now on a different microphone because we have a voice message from Gil. Take it away, Gil.
Hey, Tom, this is Gil. I hope all is well. You're now listening to me on the Fifine K688 microphone, and I have it plugged in via USB-C into my brand new MacBook Pro M3 Pro, and it sounds great. But this message is not about the microphone. It's more so about my experience with this new laptop. Every time I get a new laptop, desktop, iPad, I always like to stress test it. And not in the way that you might think. Yeah, of course, I do the whole disk reading and writing speeds and see how it fares to my last, computer. But I like to stress test my new devices to see if they can handle gaming. Yes. So I've been playing Baldur's Gate and a few other video games on this M3 Pro, and it has been able to handle it like a champ. But I've also have been playing Nintendo Switch games, allegedly, and games like Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Strikers or some other RPG titles from the Nintendo Switch, and I'm able to play it on my MacBook Pro M3 Pro, allegedly, and have fun. All right, just wanted to share that with you. I might send another message because this is going to be a really fun episode. I already know it. All right.
Gil. Yes, so a couple of things to address there. First, congrats on the new computer. The Fifine mic sounds more than Fifine. I'm pretty impressed with their stuff. Congrats on the new computer. I think your stress test is a great stress test. And the fact that you're using it, like the benchmarks to me are kind of useless. I do them too when I get one just to sort of see, but it's like, I don't know, it doesn't really mean anything until I can actually use something. Like going from my previous Intel computer where I could not run Photoshop and Final Cut at the same time, or I could not use something like Zoom without the fan sounding like it was going to blast off into space, and then getting an M1 computer where I could do all those things at once and the computer's dead silent. I don't even know what the benchmark score would say, but I know that my quality of life and my like actual now computing abilities are so different that it makes a huge difference. So I like that your stress test involves things that you actually use and matter. And video games are so good, especially on a Mac. Like obviously Macs are not always known for their gaming performance, but using that on a Mac is pretty good. And the thing you alluded to with this being a fun episode, astute listeners might notice that the topic changed a little bit, because typically episode 6 would be the community episode, but kind of had this awesome conversation with Heather that I thought was sort of a cool way to reflect on that. But I will say, I will just sort of jump into that. We're talking about video games. Heather and I are deep. We're actually at the very, very end of Yakuza Infinite Wealth, or I guess it's Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. As you may or may not know, because I mentioned this, I've always liked games, but Heather has been like the gamer in our relationship. For Christmas, her brother gave me an Analog Pocket, which is like a retro gaming handheld device. You can play all of the old Game Boy cartridges on it, but you can also load, ROMs and virtual things. And so I played my first ever RPGs. It was like baby's first RPG. I did Chrono Trigger, which was fantastic, and then I did Earthbound and Mother 3. Which is the sequel to Earthbound. And those games are phenomenal. And Chrono Trigger's Heather's like all-time favorite game. And it was like the thing that like got her into RPG gaming as a kid. And so I wanted to play that because she's only talked about it forever. And it's so, so good. Like it still holds up so well. And Earthbound is like my Chrono Trigger. It's the one that like, I just like the world. Like I really love the world and the writing and the gameplay. And now that I've played other games since then, I have seen how these tropes and these things evolve a lot. And it's kind of cool. And you can even see like there's references that I wouldn't have gotten in other games. But Heather has been playing through the entire Yakuza series for a long time now, because Infinite Wealth just came out. I think it came out in February. Maybe in March, I don't remember. But basically, I had seen her start to play the series a couple of years ago, and it's just kind of always on in the background. And so I always like the music. I like some of the characters, but I don't know much about it or how to play it or anything like that. And especially, I just did not understand how RPGs worked when she played Like a Dragon when that came out a couple years ago, because it's just like there's just so much stuff on the screen. I didn't understand it. And it's crazy because after playing even something old like Chrono Trigger or Earthbound, I can jump into now PS5 game and understand how it works and what's happening. It's like, it's so cool. I feel like I learned a new language, which is very exciting. So Heather's been playing through these, which is cool. And I sort of had an idea of what it's about. But before playing Infinite Wealth, she wanted to replay Like a Dragon from 2019. And I remember that game being really fun to like listen to and watch her play. But she's like, oh, we'll do New Game Plus, because she had already beaten it. So you can basically start the game with all of your like your weapons and your money and your leveled up stats and everything, and kind of like essentially just replay the story really fast. And we ended up, she was kind of just doing that quickly, but we ended up playing it together, and then I ended up playing a lot of it, and it was so good. Like the main character in that one, Ichiban, is like my favorite video game character. He's just the best. And then we played The Man Who Erased His Name, which came out in November. And that was new to both of us. So we played that from scratch, which is really cool. And then Infinite Wealth, which came out, I guess, like a month ago. It has both characters. The main character from Man Who Erased His Name, Kiryu, and Ichiban. Then they're together. And we are like 150 hours into this game and finally at like the final boss segment here, the point of no return. So we're kind of delaying that. It has just been, it's so phenomenally good in every way. I can't even explain it. So if this were going to be the traditional community episode, most of it would be me just talking about Yakuza. And it's fun too. It's been fun to go from like playing a game on the Analog Pocket, playing a Super Nintendo game on the Analog Pocket, to playing a brand new PS5 game. It's so different. But it's been really, really fun. Now, Gil was not lying. There is another message, and it starts off with, an amazing pun that I never would have thought of, but Gil is tired of. So take it away again, Gil.
Hey, Tom, this is Gil again. Gil again's Island. Not like I haven't heard that a billion times growing up, but I really wanted to say I'm really excited for you. And I just re-listened to your most recent podcast episode, and the part where you said that you're going to be working with an after-school program really got me excited. I know you're going to enjoy it. I got to work with a program called Handy. They deal with at-risk youth, and in this program, I was teaching these kids how to podcast. The last time, I think the most recent time, we did a YouTube video. I taught them how to film a video. Everybody had their own cameras. It was amazing. And I just got word last week that I might be up to be working with my local YMCA and teaching kids how to podcast. I just love teaching. Back in the day, I was I was an art teacher for my church, and it was great. I got to teach kids how to draw, paint, do creative writing, not not the best writing, but write poems and difference between different types of poems. It was great. I love teaching. Maybe in another life I was a teacher, but I just wanted to say I'm really, really excited for you, and I can't wait to hear how it goes.
All right. Thanks, Gil. Yeah. Last week I mentioned trying to put together a podcasting course for the upcoming school year for a local, it's going to be a middle school. But it's a very much an at-risk student population, but fortunately it's an elective after-school program. So the students all want to be there. I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high because I know, when somebody says in the spring, yeah, we're going to do this for the fall, and so many planning, budgetary, administrative changes happen that, it might be like, oh, we can't do that now. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but it is something that I'm very excited about and very much looking forward to. And Gil's done so many cool, teaching things. It's been interesting to me learning that there are so many different ways to teach without being the traditional classroom teacher that was my career for so long, which I kind of thought was like the only way to do it. And, I'll tell Gil the same thing a lot of people tell me through your channel and stuff. You're teaching a lot. So it's like you say in a past life, maybe I was a teacher. In this current life, you definitely are, in addition to all the, the programs and things that you've been able to work with, which are super, super awesome. So I might need some guidance from how you approach these sorts of things. So I've never done non-compulsory, like kids have to be there and you're the teacher on their schedule giving them a grade. So it's like, I've been the teacher that invites people in to teach stuff, but I've never been the person invited in to teach anything before. So it's definitely a very different role, but something I'm super excited about. And one of my favorite things working with, like high school students in the past was, like you said, teaching them podcasts and video is they're so not jaded. Yeah, I mean, some, teenagers have hormones and things, and they can be, a little bit jaded, but it's a little different than how, a 36-year-old might be jaded. A teenager, like when they're genuinely become interested in something, they kind of can't hide it. It's like how, when a dog is excited, its tail wags and it can't hide that. It's sort of the same thing. And, and teenagers don't always have to look at everything as like, well, how is this going to make me money? It's just sort of, I like this and I want to do this and learn more about it. And it's just the pure joy of it is what drives them. And that being around that again would be super fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that's a thing that happens. Thanks so much, Gil, for the voice messages. I appreciate them very, very much. And of course, if you want to send voice messages, you can do what Gil did. You could email them, tom@enthusiasmproject.com, but Gil used SpeakPipe. So you can go to hi-my-name-is-tom.com and just right there on the front page of the website is a thing that says record a message for the podcast. You can just use your phone, whatever device you want, and record an episode right there. So all that being said, let's dive into Heather and I talking about 3 years of full-time content creation.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. We're recording for the first time in my new little dual person setup over here.
I know Tom's very excited that he can look at me as he's talking.
Yeah.
You could have done that before.
But I had to turn my neck to the left.
You have to do that on the couples table.
I know, but now I don't have to. I can just gaze into your eyes.
All right. So today we are going to talk about, was this my idea?
This was your idea, yeah.
So it was Tom's 3-year anniversary of being a full-time content creator in March.
Yeah.
Officially.
Which is crazy, yeah. March 19th was my last day officially teaching. March 20th was my first day full-time employment. And that was the day I went on Kevin Basic Filmmakers live stream with like 6 other people. And it was the best live stream ever, but it also had the most technical difficulties of any live stream ever. And it was a great way to kick off like a new job.
Well, 3 years is a long time. I think you have now graduated into no longer a newbie.
Ooh.
You know how we were called newlyweds for like the first 2 years? Yeah, you're I think you've moved into intermediate. You've got experience under your belt.
All right, I'll take it.
So that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah, I'm curious where you're going to take this.
Me too.
Okay.
It's going to be a journey. So I think that this phase would have been the most helpful for you before you quit. Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff out there for like the first
I see.
time period about quitting. And then there's people who are just have been doing it forever. And sometimes you wonder like, how the heck did you even get there? But this period is like, okay, you've worked out the kinks, you figured out the workflow, you've had ups and downs, you've tested all the things, and now you're trugging along.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So, first question. What is it really like being a full-time content creator?
You laughed in the middle of your own question.
What is it really like? Because I think I feel like the first couple, I don't know, I guess first 2-3 years, right? So much of it is just like, what am I doing? It's like survival mode. It's just like, at least it was for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I think for you had built a foundation before you made the leap. So maybe it was a little bit different. But for me, I was just like, I don't even know what I'm doing every day. It was like existential crisis every day.
Yeah. By the time I quit, I was working like 2 full-time jobs. And so I had been doing this full-time, but just with also a full-time job. But the difference was the pressure of like, there's no safety net of, if this all fell apart or something weird happened or it didn't make enough money to pay the bills, there was a job to pay the bills. So it was a very different, even though nothing changed, everything changed kind of thing.
So what is it really like? What is it actually like?
It's great. Like, it's great. I don't know.
So if you could tell the mom who is like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. Or I'll do that when I turn 45 or whatever the hell you said.
That's not what I said. I said, I need like 2 or 3 years to get things where I wanted them or something, which would be basically just right now. Yeah, no, I'm really glad he was forced in a way to take the leap earlier because it's great. Like I don't, okay. I think when people hear content creator, they have like the Instagram influencer kind of, it's not that glamorous.
Right. It's so not glamorous.
Yeah. It's very much more kind of like a regular job. But the part that's great about it, which doesn't even necessarily have to be a content creator, but is the self-employment part. And I think that's a personality thing. I think some people are predisposed to being better at self-employed or like functioning better when they're self-employed, and other people are better when they're employed and they have, they sort of have a direction, a guideline to follow. Both are fine. I think it's just different. And I learned that a lot of the problems I had when I was an employee, a lot of like my frustrations and a lot of my stress came from not being the one in charge, where it's like, there's so many better ways to approach this thing, but we have to do it the dumbest way possible because somebody needs to impress their boss, because that person needs to impress their boss. And now I have to do something stupid because of it. That's really frustrating. And now it's like, especially public education, which is like the slowest behemoth of an industry.
So much red tape.
I mean, literally, it like you're planning stuff. One school year starts, so it's like August, and you're literally, now we have to plan for the next school year, not because we're being so efficient at getting ahead, but because things are so slow. It's like, okay, is there something I think I need now that we'll have to implement in a year? And
no, like
maybe
anything you come up with in the middle of the year is like, oh, that's a great idea for next school year.
for maybe the middle of next school year
Yeah.
or the one after. And it's like, and for me, that was always torture because it was like, I was looking at students going like, okay, half of them won't even be here then because they'll graduate. Like, I didn't like that. And so now, self-employed, I can make the rules. If I wanted to have a massive bureaucracy like that, I could, but I don't. So if I want to change something or try something, or we decide to do something, it can happen today.
Which actually, yesterday was a perfect example.
Yes, it was.
Yes, because I had a crappy morning. I was not feeling good. I like physically, mentally, the whole thing. I took 2 naps. It was kind of just a day. It's just a weird day. But then I don't even know what time it was, like 2:30 or 3 p.m. I think it was 3 p.m.
It was getting late in the afternoon there.
And I was like, Tom, I have an itch to make a video, but I need your help. And I was like, here was what I was thinking. I need you to be the one who's like holding the camera. And then Tom put on the creative director hat out of nowhere. I actually wasn't expecting that, but it was so much fun. And we crunched out an Instagram reel in an hour.
Yeah, I mean, the filming part was
like
20 minutes,
recording.
and then you edited it and posted. You know, you took care of all that. I just recorded.
If there's no way that would have happened of like idea to publish
Right.
in anywhere, nowhere.
No,
There's
you'd have
no
to
way.
run through meetings and get approvals, and what about a revision, and maybe this, and it's like, and by the time, it was done before you could even think about doing it almost.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like, I guess to be fair, also could have downsides. That's where sometimes you see people do things that are really dumb and get them in trouble because they didn't take time to think about it. But I don't think either of us are predisposed to that type of thing. So I think it's okay.
Yeah. So I think the thing that a lot of people worry about when they're trying to start their own business, whether it's content creation or not, is all the stuff like taxes and health insurance and my sole, what is it called?
Sole proprietor.
There you go. Sole proprietor, do LLC, just all the fees and permits and blah, blah, blah. Now you've done this a couple years. So how was it?
So I did a couple podcast episodes about this in the beginning, and then I kind of stopped because the more experience I gained, the more I realized I knew just so little that I just didn't want to do anything that was going to be a guidebook to anybody.
Sure.
So that's my disclaimer.
Okay, so taxes.
Yes. Those are tricky. They can be tricky. The tricky part is that as an employee, I always just had my W-2. And that would come at the end of January. And then I could go online in 10 minutes for free, file my taxes, be done. Usually get a return of some kind. And that's not how it works now. Because, you have to pay, at least in the US, you have to pay quarterly taxes, which is estimated based on how much money you think you're going to make that year. And then that could cover your end of year taxes, or you could have to pay more. And then when you actually do your taxes, you don't just have your W-2, you have probably a bunch of 1099s, probably a bunch of other things. And then you essentially, it's like you have to explain where this money you got came from and where it's and what it was used for and how much of it was used to run your business. And in our world, that can be tricky where the business and the personal are so interwoven. There's not like a super clear delineation all the time. So navigating that is tricky.
Yeah. And I think what was hard for Tom and I is that, obviously we joined in more ways than one legally, where we got married, but we also created the LLC together. So like us merging all of that, because I had my own system.
Yeah.
And you had never done this before. So creating and merging our systems together where it just makes sense was a definite learning as we're going.
Yeah, every year it feels like there's been some other new big lesson to learn. Yeah. And what
I don't know why I just snorted.
It's adorable. And one of them is like when you probably need to work with an accountant to get this done because it's too complicated to navigate otherwise on your own. And finding an accountant who
understands what a content creator
as a job is, or at least is willing to learn with you and figure it out. that can be tricky. And so finding the right person, and even finding the right person might not be the right person, because we started off with an accountant who was terrific, but they were in a different state. And so it just turned out they just weren't as familiar with our state's tax laws and rules and things. And so we ended up having to switch to someone in our same state because they were more familiar with things. And so it's like, it's not even finding someone good, but it's finding someone good who understands the industry you're in and the rules for your country or your state or both. And that part can be tricky. But I was having dreams of like going to jail for tax fraud, which I had to learn probably isn't a thing. We're not committing tax fraud. It's not, like,
Tom always thinks he's in trouble, so that's just his
even when
state of being.
We're not doing anything remotely wrong. But I just want everything. I'm so used to, in the world of tax and things, it just being buttoned up and done in like January, early February.
Tom also has like an 800 credit score. The high, what is it, 850? I don't know what the highest.
I think that's the highest.
Yeah, that's what Tom has. So I mean, when it comes to numbers and finances, well, the first time I met Tom, he had a budget sheet in his kitchen where he would like I feel like most people don't do this, so
I wasn't showing it to visitors. It was just a thing that was hanging out on the counter.
People are listening to this and being like, Heather, of course, like everyone has one of these. I'm like, I don't know. Tom, I feel like, takes it up a notch when it comes to,
well, I was used to things being very structured, orderly, and clear.
Financially
and when your career becomes something new and emerging and unclear, you find out that even the systems and the professionals involved don't always have an answer or a process, and you have to figure it out together or with your partner or whatever. And that just sort of getting comfortable with the discomfort is part
exactly.
of it.
Like that's been a surprising amount of time spent in the past 3 years is figuring that whole thing out.
Yeah.
So I think it's significant. I think it's worth talking about because it's not like being a full-time content creator. It's just the fun part. Like, there's you're running a business.
There's whole days that are just like calling the IRS and going to the bank and like, you're like, this is not super the glamorous world of like content creation that people think, but it's worth it because ultimately, if you look at the number of days in the year, the number of hours or days you spend doing that aren't nearly as many as the ones you spend doing the stuff that you want to do on your own terms.
Right. What has been the hardest part?
Ooh, there's a lot of difficult parts, because even though it's great, like it's the best, but and some of them, I don't know if it's content creation or self-employment, but like being your own boss is hard. You know that, because as great as it is, because you can make the decisions, it's very hard to draw boundaries. Like your boss is always bothering you 24/7. Like you can't escape them because you are them. And I think something that can be difficult, which I think I've done an okay job with, but need to get better, is kind of keeping perspective of, when to call it a day, when something is done, when you don't need to worry about this, because you can kind of feel sometimes like you're not doing enough, and so
the to-do list is never ending.
Yeah, the to-do list never ends, but sometimes you can also feel like, if it's almost like busy work is satisfying. Like if I just go on and I just feel like I've been working on something all day, I'm gonna get, I'm gonna make progress and get some kind of return on that. And no, like this just doesn't work that way.
The tricky part about being self-employed is that your effort does not necessarily correlate with how much you get paid. So you can spend all day or, forever on a video, for example, and it could be your worst performing video or your, it's just for your creative expression.
Yeah. And there's no,
which is valid. Like that's a great thing. But like, learning all of that is.
Yeah. Those are all things that don't necessarily matter as much when it's not your full-time thing. And that, the thing for me has been trying to find the balance of like, I want to do things my way and keep up my integrity and my process and my creative fulfillment and, keep it sustainable so that I can keep doing it and want to keep doing it for a long time. But there is a fundamental shift when it becomes also, this is how you're paying the bills and like feeding yourself and stuff and your family and your and providing for your future. Like it's hard not to look at the numbers a little differently. And I understand why people fall into the traps of like taking crappy sponsorships and being, frustrated with what they're making. And like, I understand why that happens to people. And I've been wanting to avoid those things, but I think the benefit of maybe taking longer than I needed to or should have to start doing this is that I was kind of able to be a little more analytical about seeing other people doing it in a way I thought was really cool and that I liked, how I would like to do it, and seeing how people were doing it in a way that I didn't like, and trying to learn from the mistakes of others. You're going to make your own mistakes, but like trying as best I could to learn from others' mistakes first. And I think that really did help.
Yeah. What were things you didn't expect? Like just completely either good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good that I didn't expect, which just happens with content creation in general. But when you can focus on it more time, full time, the like little paths and networks and things that can form that you don't expect, like, is you never know where something is going to go. Like, regardless of a video performance or whatever, one person sees it, it leads here, it leads here, it leads here.
Yeah, we just watched one of my early videos recently, like 2 days ago. It was a video where I got my boosted board for the first time. And that was the second video that Tom watched on my channel. We hadn't even talked yet. And then that led you to watch the next video where you finally left a comment, gave me your email. And now we've been married almost 4 years.
Yeah.
So.
And that, I mean, that's probably the ultimate example of this. But even just other, the messages and the emails you can get, and like that kind of stuff, like I don't know what you would call it, the community, not the typical way you would think of like a viewer audience community, but like I don't know if it's a professional community that you can grow is crazy. And, I mean, like even getting into hockey over the past, year and a half now, year and a half, finding as I go into like, now I want to listen to hockey podcasts, finding out that people who produce some of the ones that like they
learned from you.
Which I didn't know, like they watched my channel and reached out, and like that kind of thing is super cool to then realize like, wait, so like there was one of them, there's a it's called In Goal Magazine. They have a podcast and a YouTube channel. And the podcast is great. I only got into that recently. I didn't realize the channel and the podcast were connected.
We're the same, yeah.
And finally, one of the guys from the podcast had reached out and was just saying, just touching base and introducing, and it's cool, learned a lot from the channel and everything. And I was like, oh my God, once I made the connection, I was like, I've watched like every video on the YouTube. Videos. Like if you go to my YouTube account, you go to your channel and videos, they all have the red bar under them because I like watched all of them. And that's like, I would never have expected to make, I wouldn't have even known where to begin making a connection with someone like that. And now we already have like so much in common because of that. And, like that sort of thing is really cool. Like you just get to spend more time on it, obviously, because it's full time than you could when it's part time.
Well, I think the thing is like, because you are sharing stuff about things that you're excited about, people who are also excited about that same thing might be excited about another thing that you're excited about.
Right.
You can, you know what I mean? Like it kind of overlaps.
Yeah.
And that's surprising because it's like, you don't realize that you have made an impact on what they've been creating for years.
And I think that also comes from setting the tone specifically. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true for everyone, but I know on my channel, I try to be fun and positive and upbeat. And so,
right.
Like that sets a tone. I don't know if that's going to be the case for someone who does like negative call out videos or, they could have a very different experience with their types of connections and things.
Right.
I've just been fortunate that like a lot of the people that I encounter in like that professional community are people that I would want to like be friends with and spend time with anyway. And that's been shocking.
What do you think? I don't know how to ask this. What do you think is the most misunderstood thing about being a full-time content creator? Or like, what do you wish people understood more, if that makes sense?
I mean, it's the version of a content creator on like CSI versus what it's really like.
Oh, okay. So like,
Meaning when a show like CSI who like appeals to like a very broad audience and typically a slightly older audience, when they show a profession, it's the most stereotypical version of that profession.
right.
And so
Yeah, like the cop is eating donuts or something.
yeah, if they show a content creator, it's going to be like the 19-year-old Instagram influencer who's just taking photos of herself in location and somehow she's rich, which is very small number of people. Like that's not most people. And understanding what it actually is, which I think it's slowly becoming as it's becoming a job for longer. But, you know, even on Reddit, like maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was reading a thread that was, it was in the teacher subreddit because I don't know, I still read some of the things in there. Helps me make sure that I made the right choice. There was something about like, you know, what kids want to be and kids don't have like ambition for the future. Someone was venting about something and a person replied saying like, there can only be so many like, you know, YouTubers and influencers or whatever. And I was happy because another person joined in and said like, well, actually what the influencers don't show you are all the soft skills that are required. And the kids don't pick up on that, on the communication and the writing and the planning and the organization and, you know, the technical skills and the critical thinking, problem solving, all of which are part of it.
For yourself.
Advocating for yourself. Those are things nobody usually thinks of typically when they think of like an influencer who
right, because it just looks like they're having fun.
Yeah. And so what I wish were different or more people understood is the
if you were to make a video unplanned right now,
yeah.
you can do that. That is not the same as someone who has never made a video.
Right.
Making a video unplanned. Like,
yeah, that's what we did when I did that video that was unedited. It's like, yes, I pressed record and talked for 35 minutes and it was a decent video.
Like the video we made yesterday, we can crunch it out in an hour because
yes,
we've had years of experience. Like you know how to frame the video. I know like how far to stand away from the wall. Like
we also have our individual thing where like you say something and I know you tell me you want something to look a certain way and I know what you mean, even if it's not exact. Like, yeah, we have like I
don't know to use the wide angle lens, but Tom does.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. We have our communication. All that takes time to build up.
Yeah.
And takes repetition. And the genuine skill set that comes with it is often overlooked. The biggest thing,
because it's a phone. Everyone's like, oh,
especially if you're using a phone. Yeah. Like I have a phone.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things I've realized is overlooked. Like in the past year, the way people undervalue the on camera or on microphone skills is massive.
Well, you can even say that about podcasts too, because it just looks like two people are talking.
Well, that's why I said or on microphone, because I was like, you know, the number of people like, my friends are funny, we should have a podcast. Yeah. No, you shouldn't. I mean, maybe.
Sure, yeah,
you could.
Yeah.
But
it's different when you're creating content for an audience. You know, this is totally different.
It's a very different skill set, and especially as someone who never intended to be on camera. Like I can tell you, it's a very different.
Yeah.
Which is why even like my workflow has evolved, and I think I talked about this in last week's podcast. But I now typically like set everything up to film on one day and then film the next day, so that
you've been doing that.
Yeah. So on the filming day, the thing I focus on is the presenting part of it. I don't have to think about like, wait, where does this cable go? And I need to, should this angle be over here? And should that be like, I want everything set up so that I can come in and then not think about that stuff and instead think about communicating and like being on camera, because that's what people are going to see. And because that's a whole separate skill set.
Yeah.
That is very undervalued. And a lot of times too, in the comment section, you hear people, you know, who will give the feedback. You should do this. You need to do this. Why do you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I would wager quite a bit that those people cannot present on camera most of the time, even if they have the very specific piece of technical knowledge that they're sharing. And even if they're correct, doing all of this at once and then being the person whose face is the thing people see, very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I do feel confident that most people could learn to do it.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like playing an instrument, riding a bike, doing whatever. Like you have to put in the hours to doing it, and very few people will do that.
Yeah. Is there a tool you've used this whole time? I'm sure there's a couple, but like tried and true, 3 years full time. This is the
Rodecaster. Actually, you're not using the Rodecaster.
Yeah, I was like, that's not it.
But yeah, I mean, the Notes app.
Yeah.
Like, truthfully, if you want something that like you don't have to spend a ton of money, I guess, other than buying a Mac or an
But we
iPhone or
use
something.
it all like multiple notes a day.
Yeah,
for me.
it's constant.
Yeah.
Personal and professional.
And
like,
I've tried other things, but I always end up going back to the notes.
me too. I was talking about it last week because someone had asked a question about like productivity and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, I don't have anything cool, fancy, or groundbreaking. It's the Notes app. You know, I mean, when I think of the core tools, like a good Rodecaster-like mixer. Doesn't have to be a Rodecaster. Something like that's pretty key. A good microphone is key. A camera with good autofocus is key. Those kinds of things are super. ECam Live is important.
We use it for everything.
Yeah.
Let's see. If someone, well, so say you were listening to this
Sure.
5 years ago, is there anything that you would say to yourself to kind of just like, here's what to expect. Here's how you can start preparing to make the leap. Like, is there anything that you were either blindsided about or you just didn't, is there something you could have prepped ahead to kind of prepare?
I think
if someone wanted to like transition.
I think if you genuinely wanted to try it, which I did try to do for the last like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months at least, was try doing it full time, like mock full time.
Yeah, like while you're working.
So what that meant was like, even though I was still getting a paycheck, which is a nice safety net, what if I didn't use any of that money to pay our bills?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we pay our bills? And that, that kind of like that helped to figure out like, well, is this a real thing? It's not exactly the same. Keeping track of your stuff and looking at it, realistically, because if you have a good month, something happens. You have a viral video, you release your first course, and you've been building up, so you sell a whole bunch of them one month. Whatever happens, and suddenly you're at the point where you made like 5 figures in a month. You made $10,000, $15,000 in a month, and you're like, oh my God, this is way more than full-time income for me. That's true, but will you now make $2,000 next month?
Sustainable, yeah.
Is a version of that or a level of that sustainable? So if you do keep track of your income and your revenue and all those types of things, you can look back on that and see, is this one good thing sort of a fluke, or is there a trend? And for me, in my case, the growth of the channel over now 7 years has been very like just kind of moderate. There's been little bumps and things along the way, but for the most part,
slow incline.
For the most part, it's a very okay. I think it's probably actually the most exciting graph to look at, where it's just a very
stable incline,
slow one, but it's not one that anyone's going to use on like their keynote presentation of like, look at the power of this, where it's just like a straight up, exponential growth thing. It's not that exciting. It's just sort of like slow and steady growth, and kind of looking at that. That's something that you want.
Yeah.
That's a really valuable thing that is hard to, I don't know how to make that happen. But, if you look at those types of cues, which I know it's not like, that doesn't even go for like the fun creating part, but even the creating part too, I remember people saying, now that it's full time, you can just make a whole ton of videos. And it's like, well, yeah, but I don't want to get tired of making videos. I don't want to run through all my ideas right away. I don't want to just take the 80 or 90 hours a week that I'm putting into my 2 full-time jobs now and just put those into 1 full-time job. Like, I want to be able to like breathe.
Yeah.
I want to be able to maybe not get up at 5 a.m. with an alarm every day, and maybe be able to take a break and like have more time to myself to be refreshed as a human.
Well, see, that's what I didn't expect. Is like the unglamorousness of it is the glamour to me.
Yeah.
Like that, I love that. It's like, if someone told me that this is how it's going to be, like, how awesome. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean that depends on the person. There are some people who will constantly work on five projects of some kind at the same. They're never
And
not
that's
making
great.
something, and
Right.
that's what they love. For you and I both, which is good that our like goals align.
Yeah.
We love to make stuff, but we also love to then be able to sit and go like, whew, okay.
Yeah, let's play some video games.
Yeah, and that I think is what keeps it sustainable, because the making something is always new and exciting and fun and different, and that's what keeps it going.
Are you happy?
Yes, I couldn't be happier. My biggest fear is losing it all.
You sound sarcastic.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not being sarcastic. My biggest fear is losing this.
I can see your face, so I know you're not being sarcastic. But the way that you're saying it, someone, the guy who tells jokes all the time.
It's not a joke. No, I mean, my biggest fear is losing it like that, because that's how much I care about it, and that I don't like that.
But everyone is scared about losing their job.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this is different. I could go get another teaching job. It might not be as cool as the one I had, but like if I need to be in a classroom getting a paycheck, whatever, like a lot of times you can kind of get another job. This is a thing that's very hard to replace or replicate or whatever. And as much as we can control it and try to be as effective, there's a lot of it that's out of our hands, and that is scary.
Yeah.
Which is also, though, maybe that's a thing. You want to go back to what I would tell someone? I think the stability of having your traditional job is kind of a lie, because the number of people I've known who get fired.
I've gotten laid off.
Laid off.
I've told this story on your podcast, but this is how much I had no idea. I bought a new creamer for my coffee, and for everyone to share that day.
Oh my!
And I put it in the fridge, and the chair of the board was there with the executive director in the meeting room, and I had to walk by the meeting room to go put the freaking creamer in the fridge, and they both looked at me and said, "Oh, Heather, when you're done, can you come in here?
When you're done giving us this thing you paid for, come in here, so we're gonna fire you."
And I was so excited because it was like some special flavor or whatever, and I was so excited to share it with
you. Never got to use it?
No, dude.
Oh.
I went straight into the office,
So
and
sad.
they were sitting on the other side, and they were like, it was whatever.
Oh.
We're so thankful for your work, but blah, 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 blah. And I had no idea. I went back to my office and just started crying.
Yeah.
I was like, how am I going to tell my parents I just got laid off?
I got laid off once. I don't think I ever even I think I told you versions of it, but it wasn't as serious as that, because I was like 17.
Oh yeah, this was like my my first adult job.
Yeah, it was a job you needed. I was working at a TV station when I was 17. I had been an intern. I was bouncing around to all these different positions, and finally I got hired as a floor director, which was like my dream position, because you operate all the cameras during the broadcast. You take care of the studio. You just live in the studio, take care of the studio. There were 5 cameras during a broadcast, so it was like I got to operate so many different things. It was basically a dream job. But when I got hired for it, they told me like, oh, in the next year sometime, we're going to update all these cameras. They're from like the early 90s. We're going to update all these cameras to robotic cameras, and then we won't have a floor director anymore. I was like, okay. So I knew it was temporary. It wasn't really a surprise.
Okay,
but eventually, it kind of went on a little longer than they had planned, and I was just loving the job. It was the coolest. Every day I was like, I can't believe like I go from my high school class to this. Like, this is so cool. And I remember the night my like boss took me aside, and he was like, well, remember we talked that this was a temporary thing. There's new cameras coming in. He's like, the new cameras are here. And I remember being in the hallway and like, yep, I understand. I couldn't hide the tears that were like coming.
Oh, how cute.
And I knew he could tell, and I was just like, that was the terms of the job. Like, and it's also from their point of view, like, just hire the high school kid to like ride this thing out till we're done with it, and then he can go because he doesn't matter. But like but the point is like
stability
is much more of an illusion than you think. And even I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth reiterating. As a tenured public school teacher, that's more stability than most jobs have.
Yeah.
Like, for the most part, unless I do something absolutely horrific or illegal, I have a job. And to give that up seems crazy. But even that, I'm I'm tenured, so I'm guaranteed a job. I'm not guaranteed a certain job. So I could be transferred given the worst assignment ever, which is a thing that people do when they want to drive someone out. They just ruin their daily life, make you miserable, and then you leave. Which is illegal but very difficult to prove. So that can happen, but also it doesn't take much for there to be an administrative change at a school site to change everything. A legislative change, a district change, like economic, like there's so many other variables that are just, it doesn't even have to do with you or your performance.
Someone joined the team.
Of course.
Who is so toxic. And that was like one of the contributing factors for me finally quitting.
You're not the job you got laid off from, but your
the last job
full-time
I had.
job.
Yeah. It was so
just one person, one shift can change everything. That's definitely happened to me at previous jobs too. And so I would say that there's more stability in a traditional job than, being a full-time content creator.
You don't have to, So the difference is that it is someone's full-time position to worry about taxes and accounting and law, like HR laws and like all of that stuff that we had to kind of figure out on our own and have to make time for.
Yeah. So there's more stability there, but there's not as much as I thought.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's as much as a lot of people think. I think a lot of people, the thing that sometimes baffles me is when someone, I understand if someone has like a 5,000 subscriber channel, they're barely starting to make revenue, and they're like, how do I do this full time? That's hard. Like you have a ways to go before it can probably be full time, unless you're, young and living at home and single and stuff. But if you're an adult with a family and expenses and things, that can be difficult. The flip side to that is the number of people I know who have quite large channels, hundreds of thousands, maybe even into the millions, and still don't do it full time. In some cases, I know it's because they don't want to. They really like their job.
Right. Yeah.
And that's awesome. In other cases, I almost feel like they're tortured. And a number of times I've seen people use stability as the excuse. And I'm like, you've been using this as an excuse for years now. All of those years you could have been doing this full time. So, okay. And two, it is more of an illusion than you think. Like,
well, I think also for us is because this is the thing I bank on if like everything hits the fan is that me and you are so adaptable and we have a skill set that nobody can take away.
Right.
So if we need to restructure, you need to start doing consulting, I need to start teaching classes in person again, or I start working with local businesses to make content for their social media. Like there's so many ways that we can figure out how to make money if for some reason YouTube disappeared. Yeah. And so like it's almost like I feel like there's more security on banking on us.
Regardless of your industry, investing in yourself is always the best thing for sure.
Because no business is ever gonna be able to pivot that quickly.
No.
For us, we could start. You can schedule consulting things on your calendar right now.
Right, and that. When I worked at Trader Joe's, the grocery store, which at the time when I started working there, they were one of the higher paying stores. You got insurance. It was a good place to work. That kind of changed at the time I was there. But the thing that they did was they paid, especially their managers, really well. So like even like their store managers could make, I think, upwards of $150,000, $160,000 a year. This is back in like 2007, 2008. So
ballers.
That's pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
And their like lower level managers, their entry level managers could start at like 80,000 or something. You automatically, a full-time week was 50 hours. So you didn't work less than 50 hours a week. But most of them hadn't gone to school because a lot of them, they started working at the store kind of straight out of high school, right, or maybe even in like community college.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, you keep going to school or you get this job where you're making 80 grand a year and you're 21 years old, 22 years old. The number of people that just took that, like, why wouldn't you? And I even was like, I'm working like multiple jobs and going to school and broke. Like I could just work one job and have more money and time. Like what? But the thing I saw happen again and again was they were investing in this company, and all it took time and time again was one management change. And suddenly they would either get fired or they would literally, like, it really did happen where people like they had worked years at a store that's 5 minutes from their home. And now, starting on Monday, you work at the store that's 90 miles away, but you still work 50 hours a week. But now you just have a a 2-hour commute on top of that each way. And obviously the whole point of that is to get them to
Get
quit.
them to quit, yeah.
Yeah. And then people would quit. And when they quit, they aren't going to go make $80,000 a year anywhere else. Most of the time I saw them just being like a regular kind of clerk at another grocery store for probably, 14, 15 bucks an hour at the time, which was decent-ish pay, but not nearly what they were doing. And they were just kind of screwed because they had invested so much time in one specific company, not in themselves. And that was kind of the thing I told myself was like, I'm going to school. I know English degree is kind of made fun of as the useless degree, but it's something no one can take away from me. And the skills that come with it. And then, every job I had, the experience, like trying to learn things that can't be taken away.
Yeah.
So that goes for not just content creation, but investing in yourself is a thing. But content creation forces you to invest in yourself so hard that you end up building such a diverse skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're doing R&D
Constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I just want to say I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. I could not have done this without you, so thank you. I mean,
we're lucky that we're a team.
We are the day we met years. I mean, my channel had 4 subscribers or something. You were like, you should do this. You just do this full time. I was like, it's costing me money. This makes negative dollars. Like, how could I do this full time?
I just always knew. I was like, dude, man.
So it was very nice because I also know for a lot of people, getting their partner on the page with them.
Yeah, it's hard. I know. We're so lucky.
It is difficult. And the fact that we're able to just sort of be on the same page and have that support is a really, really lucky thing. And you also helped me, going from a more structured existence to an unstructured one. You've helped me to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and understand that things can be figured out. And, it's all okay.
It's going to be okay, babe. Don't worry. Well, yay. Congrats.
Yay. Well, thank you for doing this episode and having this idea. This was really fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to take time and reflect.
Yeah.
And sometimes you kind of like, it's hard to do that by yourself. You kind of need the other person in the room to do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for listening to this. I appreciate that. If you have any thoughts, comments, feedback, as usual, you can send them to tom@enthusiasmproject.com, or you can go to himynameistom.com and leave a voice message for the show. If you want to check out Heather, where should people go?
youtube.com/HeatherJustCreate. And you'll find the Couples Table, which is the live stream podcast that Tom and I host.
Pretty much every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.